What's going on today, guys? I just finished up with work and I have some time, so I'm gonna knock out another video. And this specific video was requested by Time Creator 8580, I think it was, is his handle. He was asking if I could make a video about what kind of weather we deal with here in Wyoming. And this will not be the first one because we are barely getting into fall, let alone actual winter. But just as a general overview, this video is going to be about what specifically we deal with and where I am specifically. So I'm based out of Cheyenne for Gemini Motor Transport. And for us specifically, we just deal with a little bit of I-25 going south into Colorado, and then I-80 going west all the way out to Wamsutter on the regular. Sometimes, on rare occasions, we'll go all the way to Green River, which is about 270 miles west of us, but it's primarily Wamsutter, which is 3 hours west or 190 miles west, thereabouts. And between there and Laramie and Cheyenne, you have a lot of different things going on. There is a lot of wind that concentrates into gusts that are anywhere from 65 to 75 miles per hour. And those gusts are primarily concentrated along I-80 in certain spots, and also I-25 north of Cheyenne, which we don't generally go to because there's no stores of Cheyenne that we currently deal with or source as far as fuel. But so in I-80 specifically, from milepost about 290, so Cooley Dome Road, all the way to about milepost 240 or so, there's going to be some challenges because that's the section of I-80 that butts up against the north end of the Snowy Mountain Range, and you're going through the foothills in that section of I-80. And so what happens is wind will come off the mountain range, right? And the mountain range itself will get a lot of snow. We typically don't get a lot of snow outside of the mountain ranges. Cheyenne, I think on average only gets 50 to 60 inches, somewhere in there. It's not a lot. And same thing pretty much everywhere else outside of the mountains. The only exception to that within Wyoming is the northwest part of the state near Yellowstone. They get a lot of snow. Everywhere else is high desert, and we just don't get that much snow around here. But what happens is the wind, wherever you are within the state, will take that snow and not only drift it into inconvenient spots along the road or wherever else, but it will also blow it across the road so that your visibility goes to very little. So in that specific spot along I-80, you're going again through the foothills of the Snowy Range. And what happened to me about 2 Februarys ago, so this is coming up on 2 years ago, when I was at Pilot, I had gone out to a Rock Springs store, delivered the fuel, and weather was completely fine going out there, right? It had snowed, and so there was snow on the foothills of that mountain range, but there wasn't any wind that was actually blowing it across the road. But as I was coming back to Cheyenne from Rock Springs, and I was coming up on Wagon Hound Road, the wind had picked up to huge gusts, 65, 70 mile per hour winds, and they were essentially blowing the drifts that had accumulated on the foothills next to the interstate across the interstate to where you would go 100 yards and you'd have decent visibility, but then you would suddenly get a drift to where it was now whiteout. You couldn't see past the front of your hood. And that was the case for me. And the only thing that solves that is slowing down and also making sure before you go anywhere, obviously, that you have decent tread on your tires. And it was problematic for me at the time because I was unloaded, so I didn't have that extra weight for traction. And I was going along maybe 5-10 miles per hour because that's all the visibility allowed for. And then as I was coming to a clearing and I had some better visibility, I looked in my rearview mirror and my second trailer, my pup, was starting to fishtail out towards my driver's side. And the only thing you can do in that scenario, unfortunately, is accelerate to pull your pup back in alignment with your first trailer. So that's what I did. And I also at the same time was starting to slide out from my drives because, again, even though I had decent tires, I had very little traction. So it's a combination of the wind blowing the drifts into the road, causing low visibility, on top of the ice that we obviously get. And by the way, they don't throw de-icer out here. They just throw sand, which I know a lot of people are upset about, but at the same time, my car doesn't rust out. So there is that. But the snow plows, by the way, they do a good job, generally speaking, of clearing the snow and as much ice as they can off the road, off the interstates. But at a certain point, there's only so much you can do, especially if it's below zero and it's snowing and the wind is blowing. Generally speaking, and again, they don't force you to go anywhere, at least either at Pilot or at Gemini Motor Transport. If you think it's too dangerous, you can let them know and you can turn around, and that's that. So there's no forced dispatch, by the way. Related to that, you're not required to chain up anywhere. Obviously, there are some scenarios where it would probably be safer to chain up, especially if you are having to go that slow because of visibility anyways, and if there's a lot of ice on the road, which does happen. It's probably better to chain up in some scenarios. I have not had to chain up specifically anywhere except for when I was at Pilot. I was actually at the Rollins store, and I had a set of doubles. And rookie mistake, I unloaded my first trailer before my second trailer. And so I was trying to pull forward after I had unloaded my first trailer, and I couldn't because now I had no weight over my drive tires, and I had that boat anchor, which is the second trailer, weighing me down. So I was just spinning my tires on ice. And so technically I didn't actually put the chains on, but I threw the chains underneath the drive tires. And there's tricks that you can do that are similar to that without actually putting chains on. And learned a lot of those doing oil field work, which that'll be a separate video. But that's the only time that I threw chains, so to speak, here in Wyoming. And again, I've only been here for 2 winters now, coming up on my 3rd for this winter. But we don't have there are some significant steep grades throughout the state, but we just generally don't hit them. There are some steep grades that I went over once for Pilot, and that's the Three Sisters. I forget how it's 3 separate steep hills that you have to go over before you get to Evanston, which is on the Utah border. But fortunately, there wasn't any ice at the time, and or any snow or bad weather at that point. But we don't go that far west, and we do deal with the Sherman Pass. That it's a hill. It's about 8,400 feet elevation. It is a 5% grade down to Laramie once you hit the summit. That can get kind of tricky. I've had some coworkers tell me they've had a couple times after dropping in Laramie, they've had to put chains on to get back up the hill, but I haven't had to do so yet. And again, it's just making sure you're not doing a high speed up the hill. You're just plugging along at 30 to 40, maybe even 50 miles an hour if the speed allows it. or if the conditions allow it. And you're just being very cognizant of where the ice actually is forming on the road versus maybe where there are some ruts. Otherwise, you'll also deal with freezing fog. I actually hit that this morning. Primarily between Cheyenne and Laramie, you'll hit freezing fog in the winter, and then just normal fog the rest of the year, on a pretty consistent basis as well. Again, just slow down. If your visibility is bad, you shouldn't be going the speed limit anyways. I slow down to 30-40 miles an hour if I have to, if it's that bad, and sometimes it is. But again, we're paid by the hour. The only other thing I'm going to address here is the YDOT closures. When a windstorm does come through the state, they'll, in the sections that it's hitting along either I-80 or I-25 or even I-90 up north, they will put on the DOT message boards along the highway, closed I-80 or I-25, whatever interstate it is closed to high-profile, lightweight vehicles, and then they'll have a designation of weight, either 40,000 or more recently they've been going up to 50,000 pounds. So if you're under 50,000 pounds and you're a high-profile vehicle, like a dry van that is unloaded or is below 50,000 or 40,000 pounds, you should not be on the highway. And if you get blown over because you didn't listen to the sign and you cause the highway to get shut down, which is generally the case, then you get a pretty hefty fine with that. Otherwise, generally speaking, it's primarily just the wind that we deal with and them closing the roads as a result of people not listening to the partial closures. We as tanker drivers, both at Pilot and here at Gemini Motor Transport, we don't have to follow that partial closure because we're not considered high profile, and the tank generally handles very well in the wind. It just kind of the wind wraps around the tank, versus if you have a dry van or a reefer, you have all that flat surface area for the wind to push against, even if you are loaded. But yeah, so we're not considered high profile, and even when we are unloaded, generally speaking, even on the worst gusts that we have felt, we're gonna be okay for the most part. You might get pushed a little bit, but then you just kind of, slowly correct it back to within the lane if you get pushed out of the lane. But again, primarily just if you slow down and you have decent tires, you're gonna be fine. We are high altitude for the most part, generally going to be above 5,000 feet throughout most of the state, unless you go farther north and east, or just east in general. And temperatures, they're not going to drop significantly below, unless you're high altitude. Generally, the lowest temperature I've worked in is about -25, maybe -30 with the wind chill. But that's specific storms, or after the specific storms. It's not super common. Generally speaking, even in the dead of winter, we're going to be hovering around 10 to 20 degrees on the low end, and then 30 to 40 degrees on the high end. And because we have a high average amount of days per year that we get a lot of sunshine, we have, I think, pretty close to 300 days per year where the sun is shining. Snow doesn't stick around, so even if we get a big storm where we get several inches, 6, 7, maybe even 8 inches on the high end, the sun's going to come out within the next day or two, or even the preceding week, and it's going to melt. And our temperatures just don't stay consistently below freezing to the point where the snow could stay around, outside of some specific areas that don't get a lot of sunshine. But yeah, otherwise, I think that about covers everything. Again, if you guys have any other topics that you want me to cover in specific videos, please just put it down in the comment section below. And I will see you guys on the next one. If you found this video helpful, please like and subscribe, and take care. God bless.